I'm Champaign native Emily Harrington. You're watching the podcast where townies and transplants share their tales of tears and triumphs, losses and wins, proving week after week that everyone has a story to tell. Welcome to HyperLocals. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the next episode of the HyperLocals podcast. I'm excited. It's a rainy, early morning, but we are here. We are doing it. And Abbi Littell.
Hi.
Did I do it?
Abbi Littell, yes. Close enough. It's better than little, right?
Yes. Okay, you told me an easy way to remember it is you have a literature degree.
Yes, that is the most surprising thing about me for a lot of people.
Oh, interesting.
Because violence prevention is a public health issue. And so
Sure.
they're like, literature, how did that happen?
Yes.
But I'm originally from Alabama, so
Okay.
I am one of two people to have a high school degree in my family
Oh,
and
wow.
the first person to go to college in my family. So when I got in college, I was like, let me do something I'm good at.
Sure.
Why not literature? But by the time I hit my senior year, I was like, wow, violence prevention is really interesting. What can I do more to learn more about this? And that set me up to actually become the first healthy relationships coordinator at Auburn University. And then I moved up here and got to continue that wonderful work in Illinois, which has been a big shift, but it's absolutely a pleasure.
Are you a big Auburn fan today? That's a pretty loyal school, right?
Ooh, yes, a very... We would actually sign off on our emails War Eagle. So it is very much like when I was in my college job, they were like, do not wear any other merchandise. Like, people will not purchase from us. I have divisive feelings about, like, if I'm a fan of Auburn now, mainly because I'm not big into sports ball. But I will say they paid me to go to school, so I'm happy to be like, yeah, Auburn, I went there.
Well, now you have to bleed orange and blue.
Yeah. Well, that was the easy transition when I came up here to Illinois to Champaign. I was like, all my orange and blue just transitions.
Oh, that's
perfect.
That's so funny. Okay, you mentioned you got a full scholarship. Is that right?
Yes. So I got a couple of different scholarships. A lot of them were because I was a first-generation college student.
Wow.
So that's really what set me up. But I still worked all of my way through college as well.
2 people in your family had a high school degree.
Yes, with me being one of them. So my older cousin was the very first person in our immediate family to get a high school degree, and then I was the second.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
That's unusual statistics, don't you think?
I know, right? It is very unusual, but I think this is, kind of something that we see. I grew up in a very impoverished family. So generationally, my mom had dropped out of school, I believe, before 5th grade.
Oh, wow.
And same thing with my aunt. So my cousin, when he got his high school degree, of course, that was really meaningful for her.
Sure.
And then as I've went and gotten my degrees, my mom has been like, whoa, I never got to do this. So it's been really cool.
Were you pushed in that direction, or was something innately in you that you knew you would achieve?
Oh, totally push in that direction.
Okay.
They were like, this is how you get out of here, is you go and you get your degree. But what I didn't anticipate is, as an 18-year-old, you don't know what you want to do for the rest of your life, right? So that's why I went through that whole process of getting my lit degree and then being like, wait, human and family development, that sounds great. Or social work, that sounds great. And then I'm looking and I'm sitting here surrounded by books that I've been told to read and have not read.
Yeah.
But it created this wonderful connection because literature is about creating and capturing the human experience. So that really set me up to be able to come at sexual violence prevention work with a survivor-focused response and really understand everything that can go into somebody's life.
You mentioned getting out of here. That's the goal. Is that something you always felt as a child?
Oh, 100%. And complete honesty, I grew up in a very abusive household, which is part of the reason I have I feel like a strong passion to be there for other community members. To tell them, hey, look, it doesn't have to be this way. We can break the cycle.
So personal experience and education led you to where you are.
Oh, 100%. I always wanted to be in education. I was initially going to be a literature professor. That was going to be my big goal. And something about literature professors, they are the main ones who will tell you not to go get a PhD in literature.
Oh, sure.
So I had to pivot, and I knew I wanted to do education, didn't really want to go into K through 12. So finding out that I would be able to teach students protective things to keep them safe and to keep them from experiencing abuse, I was like, this is perfect. This is my niche. And so that's where I've been ever since.
In whatever way you're comfortable, can you describe your personal experience?
Yeah. So I think this is wonderful for people who are thinking about, those intersections and the way that violence is generational.
Sure.
So I was just talking to a coworker the other day that one of the biggest things I've had to reckon with, and I believe a lot of survivors have to reckon with, is that I was a product of sexual violence. So my mom had her first child at 16, had her second child at 18, and then had me much later. But she had already been shaped by having those children that young and having a much older husband who had exploited her to have those children.
Okay.
So that really set the tone throughout my childhood of like, okay, I'm seeing this kind of trickle down into how she's treating me now.
Sure.
So what can we do to build up those protective factors so kids can't get stuck in that position, or they realize like, oh, this much older person is interested in me, and that's actually not okay. So I think a lot about that because my mom's first husband was, I believe, 28 when he started dating her at 16.
Okay, so what we call today a grooming situation?
Yes, I would definitely call it a grooming situation. And my mom, it was always interesting hearing her talk about her first husband because she was always like, he hung the moon and the stars in the sky. But he was also very abusive. So it was always a very divisive description of either he was committing this horrible abuse to her or he was doing everything that she wanted. So it created this very, interesting thing to navigate, especially as I turned into an adult and as I started going through and getting more education around mental health, around violence. And we know that oftentimes violence and abuse is a generational situation.
Sure.
So I've kind of built myself up at this point to I really want to be that cycle breaker and kind of break the will. And I really love to encourage other people to do the same.
Today, how is your mom and that relationship?
I am pretty much no contact with my mom.
Oh, okay.
But I have a lot of love for her still.
Okay.
Even though if we don't fit together, I still would do anything if she needed me. But I feel that way about a lot of our community members as well.
So, this job probably gives you a lot of empathy for her situation.
Yes, that is the hardest thing is at the same time realizing that the way she treated me, that abuse was not okay. But also, she was a victim of abuse herself, and that influenced it. So learning how to hold those two things at the same time is very hard. But in this work, it's also very common to have to do that.
So let's take you back to Auburn, and you're going to graduate, and you finally get your degree in what?
Literature.
Literature. Okay. And then where do you go? What's your first big girl job?
Oh my goodness. My first big girl job was at a consumer loan company.
Oh my gosh.
So I was hawking loans to people. And I was also a debt collector. I was calling people up what can you pay today?
Oh, sheesh.
But I feel like I got sucked into that because the position I had originally been hired for was an assistant manager position. I got there, I was super excited. And then I realized just how exploitative the consumer loan kind of domain is.
Okay.
Just crazy APRs, all of that stuff.
Are you still in Alabama for this job?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm still in Alabama. I am in Alabama for about, I would say, a year after graduation before I moved up here. So that was my first big girl job. But because I realized, people should not be paying 25% APRs. That's terrible.
Sure.
I would not want to do that to myself. So that's what set me up to start looking for other positions. And I actually very intensely remember looking online at Auburn's job board and seeing a healthy relationships coordinator position. And we had never had this before. We had never talked about this before at Auburn. It was just the very general, I know UIUC has FICARE, but they also had just a very general, this is bystander intervention, this is consent, this is how we be kind people. But
healthy relationships coordinator.
Yes.
Okay.
So it sounds very vague, but what that looked like was really looking at the issues on campus, looking at what skills do these students who are coming in very fresh at 18, what skills do they need that they might not have gotten as they were growing up to now set them up to have healthier relationships the rest of their lives.
Okay, we're going to take our first break, but when I come back, I want to talk about your position as a healthy relationship coordinator.
Perfect.
Okay. And we are back. Okay. Abbi, ABBI.
Yes.
Okay, what's your full name?
So this is a story as well. My full name's Abilene,
Okay.
so like the city in Texas, but it's special because I have an extra B in there,
Okay.
so I can't tell people to spell it like the city. But my mom and my dad, they were truckers for a little bit, and as they were driving through Abilene, Texas, my mom was like, if I ever have a girl, she had all sons at that point, if I ever have a girl, I want to name her Abilene. So when I popped out, that's what I got.
And you said, we'll get to Auburn and the HRC
Yes.
position, but you said you're from a very rural community. So
Yes.
describe the community.
You know, that is something that I think about a lot. So we serve Champaign County, but we also serve Douglas, Ford, and Piatt counties. So we actually go out to those rural towns here in the Midwest as well. And I particularly love doing that.
Sure.
So for example, I've taught lessons over in Gifford. I've taught lessons in Paxton. And I really love it because it has the same vibe as towns that I grew up in. Just very rural. It's quite a drive to get to the nearest big city. I will also say that I grew up in a food desert, so we didn't have a lot of like healthy options or just good options around. Our grocery stores were people's main like bread and butter way of living, and so
Sure.
the prices were always a little bit more higher than it would be at Walmart or Aldi, et cetera, et cetera.
And it was 30 minutes to get to a Walmart.
Yes, 30 minutes to get to a Walmart, and yeah, it was over a mountain as well.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, it sounds so funny. I feel like I had to hike like 5 miles
sure.
to go get food. But that's really what it was like is, we didn't get out very much. And so I had actually never been to Auburn until I was moving there for school. So that was like a big city.
I was going to say, how did that feel?
It was like, whoa, like I'm in like the big time now, which is so funny when I think about when I first moved up here to Champaign. I came into Campus Town and I was like, oh my goodness, you have skyscrapers here.
Oh, that's fine.
And it's like, no, not really. But at the time I was like, this is incredible.
Okay.
And I still haven't had the pleasure of like going to Chicago, or I've been to Atlanta before, so I have a taste of big cities. But really, I am used to that more college town level.
Does this feel bigger than Auburn?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Really?
100%, which is ironic because we have a similar student size actually. But I think it feels bigger than Auburn did because there is so much packed in here. And I also think that we have, in a way, a more involved community, especially I see this over in Urbana a lot, but also just like the Champaign's Farmers Market, the events that we have here, it just makes everybody feel more connected.
Yeah, we try. If nothing else, we try. Okay.
I love that, yeah.
So now you're going to take a position at the college you graduated from.
Yes.
So you like it enough to stick around.
I like it enough to stick around, and I also, to be honest, I think we all work for money on some level.
Sure.
And that was also, it was like $38K. I was like,
I remember that feeling.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's an incredible amount of money.
Yes.
And then also because with healthy relationships, there's also that sexual health component, knowing how to have healthy sexual relationships. And I'm very passionate about sex ed. And so that was also the reason I decided to apply to that job as well, because we didn't have that on campus. The education system in the South does not offer comprehensive sex ed.
Okay.
So that was like, okay, I know this is something our communities need. I know we have students coming from not just Alabama, but we also had plenty of like Illinois transfers as well. They're all coming from different places. How do we meet them where they're at to, one, introduce it to people who might not have it, and two, strengthen those who do? And when I say it, I just mean those healthy relationship skills, being able to set boundaries, being able to acknowledge like, okay, I wasn't okay with this. How am I going to talk to my partner about it?
Sure. Does Illinois have comprehensive sexual education?
That is an interesting question. So there actually is a law in Illinois that requires any school that provides sex education to provide comprehensive sex ed.
Okay.
So it's going to differ a little bit depending on what school you're going to.
Okay.
But there are protections in place through the state that is making sure they are doing that. And I will also say Aaron's Law, which is what most commonly myself and my preventionists, my team, are going into K through 12 schools to do. Aaron's Law is a mandate that requires every single school, pre-K through 12, to provide some type of child sexual abuse prevention.
Okay.
And so a lot of people, a lot of places will do that through their school social worker or their counselor, which is wonderful. The kids already know them. But other schools need a little bit more support because they're overwhelmed. I can't blame them.
Sure.
So we come in and we complete that for them.
You're a resource for them.
Yes, we're a resource. We're there to work with them because we understand, like, being a teacher is not easy. Being a social worker is not easy. Let us help you carry that weight.
Sure.
Yeah.
Are private schools exempt from that?
I believe so.
Okay.
So I will correct myself. Schools that receive public funding.
Okay.
Private schools always kind of are a little different.
Yeah.
So I would recommend to any parents, any caregivers, or even if you just have like a niece or a nephew and you want to know, what is my school doing to complete Aaron's Law? What does their sexual health education look like? What does their social emotional learning education look like? I would highly recommend that you reach out and find out exactly what that looks like. It's likely you've seen consent letters come in.
Yes.
Saying, hey, are you okay if we talk to your kids about this? But that is very different than sitting down and having them break it out of like, this is the curriculum, this is the skills, and this is how you can reinforce that at home as well.
So ask that question.
Yes, ask, find out what your kids are learning at school, and then also find out how can you build on that at home, because those skills are not ingrained just from a 60 or a 45-minute lesson. They need the adults in their life to continue supporting them and to continue modeling those behaviors.
And I imagine ask them what they learned.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay.
And that is, I'll build on that a little bit. One of the biggest things to come across as a trusted adult, a safe adult with children, is to just listen. Like, no matter how small we think a concern is, like, that concern is totally overtaking their brain. So being able to sit there and understand, okay, this is what you're experiencing at school. Oh, these are the skills that they have taught you on how to deal with this. But if that's not working, how can I step in as a parent to make sure we're coming at this from a healthy perspective?
So with that said, at Auburn, what is your day-to-day looking like with the community?
So at Auburn, my day-to-day, especially when I first started, was a lot of meeting people.
Okay.
It was a lot of, here are the people who oversee student affairs. Here's the people who oversee Title IX. Let's find out what they are already doing so that we can come together and be more unified and have a more comprehensive approach.
This was a new position you're created.
Completely new, had never existed before.
Wow.
So that was the big thing, is building those networks. And then the other side was actually building out workshops. So starting to build out those trainings that students were needing. So, for example, we saw a lot of bystander intervention training, particularly with Greek life on campus, going in and making sure they understood, this is the effects of alcohol. This is how we can be good bystanders, all of that wonderful stuff. This is how you can have a conversation with somebody if you're concerned about, how much they're intaking. So it was a lot of that, but also we did have sex ed. So I remember there was a student group on campus, Planned Parenthood Generation Action. They were very, very excited for me to come into that position.
Sure.
And so I was also able to have them look over and kind of get a sneak preview of the workshops to, one, increase their knowledge, but also to have a peer group where I can be like, what is making sense here? What do we need to expand on?
Right. What do we need? What are we missing? Okay. So how long were you in that position? So it sounds like you sound like a phenomenal employee to take this nothing position and create such a curriculum with it.
So it's also interesting. I did a lot.
And you're in your early 20s.
In my early 20s, I think I was, 22, just married, just graduated college. So all of these new things were happening in my life, and I was coming into this new position. Sure. So it was wonderful. However, because of various circumstances, I believe I was only there for 7 or 8 months before I moved up here. So it wasn't a long tenure, but it was really enough for me to be like, okay, this is my niche. This is what I want to continue doing.
You got a taste of this sector, and this is what you wanted to do.
Exactly. And I think because that first role, I was able to create so much of it. It's kind of addictive. And so now I'm like, let's continue to build and create stuff, which has been wonderful with this position at Races.
Okay, so you go from Alabama to Illinois.
Yes.
So is this just by seeking out a job position opening online, or?
So it's a little bit more complicated than that. At the time, me and my husband, we knew that we wanted to move. He was from Illinois, so we knew that we wanted to be closer to his parents. So it started as looking at job positions for him. He's actually a civil engineer in the city of Champaign now. So when we saw that position open, he applied, he received it. We were kind of looking at each other like, now we got to go.
Yeah.
Now we have to pack up and get out of here. I think we had a month or so to pack and like plan to get up here. So it was a really big transition, but I think it's also just been really wonderful. It is a different culture in the Midwest, definitely. I miss the South a lot. I will always consider myself a Southerner and consider myself a big lover of the South. But the Midwest definitely has charmed me, and I really enjoy everything I've been able to experience.
You have no accent.
Yeah, I trained it out. I have trained it out. But I promise, if you were like talking to me at 11 p.m. at night, I'm probably like, what? Like,
or you're talking from someone that's there. Yes.
And I will say that when I'm around people who have Southern accents, and I will say that, especially like in Illinois, the Midwestern accent is very close to the Southern accent. Like a very thick Midwestern accent will pull out my Southern accent, and it will kind of create this wonderful little rabbit hole where we just get thicker and thicker accents from talking to each other.
Sure.
So it doesn't show up unless I'm talking to somebody else with one, or really just very relaxed. But I have trained it out from my speaking voice for teaching, for things like this. But it's in there somewhere.
Okay, it's in there somewhere. Okay, so let me ask you, in Illinois, how do you find the job with Races? Now you've moved here. Your husband's set. Mm-hmm. So what are you going to try to do?
So I am immediately like, all right, all I know pretty much is universities. So my first job I actually take up here is with the University of Illinois Extension Department.
Okay.
Which, have you heard of Extension before?
I have.
Yes, they are wonderful. They provide a lot of great resources to the community.
So I'm thinking agriculture when I think of them.
So they do a lot of agriculture. You might know that they have the Master Gardener program. They also have the Master Naturalist program. So definitely, teaching people about the natural world just to have a more holistic life.
Sure.
That's one side of what they do. They also do family and consumer sciences. So that's what my position was when I was there, is I was helping coordinate their family and consumer science program. So what that looked like is I was actually managing, at the time they had this program called Money Mentors, which provided free financial advice to community members. And the volunteers were all trained to provide that, of course. So I came in, I started managing this volunteer program. I started working with a demographic I had not worked with.
Sure.
So Extension works a lot with older adults in our community, which I think is wonderful.
Sure.
But it was a demographic I had never worked with. So I was pivoting from college-age students to older adults. And that really, it's still something that I carry with me, because it has left me just more cognizant of, how are older adults fitting into our community? How are we creating spaces where people of all age groups can interconnect?
Okay, I want to take our second break there, and then we'll pick back up with your second big girl job and how we eventually get to rape advocacy, counseling, and education services.
Spectacular.
Okay. And we are back. Okay, Abbi, ABBI. Okay, tell me where we go from the extension office. You're working with an older population.
Yes.
So from college students to an older people.
Yes.
And where do we go from there? How long are you there?
So we were there for a little bit over a year.
Okay.
So really got time to settle in, learn about Extension, really grow my appreciation for Extension offices.
And the community, just knowledge about the community.
And community. That was the biggest thing, because when I was at Extension, we were serving, I believe, Champaign, Ford, Iroquois, and Vermilion County. So I was immediately able to start traveling to those more rural towns.
Sure. Okay.
And it was really funny because I very quickly got the lay of the land.
Sure. Well, it was familiar. I mean, that feeling, that rural feeling.
And I mean, that's the great thing about Illinois is you look out, you can see the next town over.
Yes.
So I was like, I know where I'm going.
Okay, so tell me, how do we get to your next position at Races, RACES?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit after a year at Extension, I'm really just feeling like I just really miss my niche. I miss talking about sexual violence prevention. It doesn't cleanly fit into family and consumer sciences. So that's a thing I'm navigating at the time. And I remember that I look online, just kind of looking to see what's out there.
Sure.
And I still do that
20s,
today.
Yeah. As early 20s does, yes.
I always encourage people to just keep an eye on things.
Yes.
And I see that they're hiring a sexual violence prevention education coordinator at Races. And I'm reading through it. And the thing that catches my eye the most is the 24/7 hotline shifts. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, do I have capacity to do these hotline shifts? And I decide, like, I've handled a lot of hard things in my life, so why not? Like, worst case scenario, I just go, okay, this wasn't the right fit for me.
Sure.
So, funny story, when I applied, my email requesting an interview actually went to my spam folder. So I checked it, and I was like, oh my goodness, I missed this interview. I'm immediately emailing them back, can I please, just hear me out?
Oh, no.
And it's funny, I actually got the interview. I skirted right in below the deadline.
Jeez.
And I'm actually out sick with a cold when I get that interview. So I'm interviewing over Zoom, just stuffed up. And they're like, we love you. Can you come in tomorrow for an in-person interview? I'm like, I'm sick, but yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
And after that, it was just kind of, I think a perfect match. I feel very grateful that not only was I able to kind of skirt in under that deadline, but also that they liked me enough to be like, oh, whoa, this late player in the game. Get her in here. We love.
It sounds like a match made in heaven.
It was wonderful. I remember being so just full of hope after that interview because I was like, wow, these people are doing such wonderful work in our community. These people are building these protective factors that I care so much about already. Mm-hmm. So it was really just it came down for me into my lap, and I've been there ever since. It's been wonderful.
So it's about 2 years out.
It's been about 2 years now. Yes.
Okay. And did this position, education coordinator, was this you created, they created, or it existed?
So it had previously existed. So I believe there had been 2 or 3 before me. So I was coming into a program that had already been created.
Okay.
I was coming into a program where they had already picked out their curriculums. They had already had these pre-existing relationships with schools. But at the same time, the program was just not overloaded. They were just constantly out and about every single day my team was gone, which was wonderful to know that there was that demand, but it also
and bad. Wonderful and bad.
Exactly. Yeah. Wonderful and bad, because it just made me worry about them.
Sure.
Because, are you overstretching yourself? We have to recognize that support people need that support too.
Okay.
So a lot of my job was not just reviewing and learning that curriculum, getting in and teaching. It was also reevaluating, okay, how can we're making protective factors for the community. How do I build in protective factors for my staff to make sure they're not going to get burnout? In sexual violence work, usually if people are going to leave, they stay for 2 years and then they're out of here.
From burnout.
From burnout, usually, because it's just, every single day you're getting hit with something. And just the other day I was talking to somebody, sexual violence work is always going to be on your mind because, you open the news and there you go. There's a couple of articles. And so it was really important for me to be like, I don't want you to get burnout. I'm very grateful that my team is very enthusiastic. They move through with activist hearts. And my big concern is, how do I protect that for them and keep that enthusiasm going? Because that enthusiasm is contagious. I want them to be able to bring it into schools, to spark that interest, to spark that, want to know, how can we navigate? How can we have better relationships? So I will always say that my team is probably my biggest concern on the day-to-day.
That's so sweet.
But I love them so much, and they know that. I spoil them as much as I can. But I'm also just really grateful because we've built in these protective factors. We ourselves are able to have healthier relationships with our community partners and make sure that, we're not miscommunicating, making sure that we're able to slow down and work with them to really meet where they're at. So that has been the big transition since I came into this position, is building out those protective factors and then making sure we're slowing down enough to actually feel and enjoy our relationship with other organizations in the community.
As the new girl, early 20s, and you come in and you want to shake up and clean up and support, how was that met with your team? What is she talking about? That kind of thing.
It was certainly interesting.
Yeah.
One of my team members had actually applied and interviewed for the position prior to me coming in.
Oh, geez.
But something I love about Races, I feel like Races has really just helped me bloom and blossom because they are such a supportive community.
Okay.
And something that also really works with us is we have such a diverse community. We have people from all types of different backgrounds. And that has created just a very holistic, well-rounded community who's not, they're not getting stuck up in history. They're thinking about, yes, we've done these wonderful things in the past. How do we continue to build and do better? So it's not just okay, we've done great. Now I'm going to take a breather and not do anything else.
Sure.
It's, we've done great. Let's keep this momentum and keep going. So I really feel like they just brought me into the fold and was like, okay, you're here. You want to make changes. Let's figure out how we're going to do that.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. Tell me where your storefront is.
So we are actually located in Lincoln Square Mall in Urbana. We are, I want to say it's the southeast entrance.
Okay.
So if you've ever seen that kind of metal patio area, you're going in, it's right next to Common Ground. You can come in that entrance. We are right to the left. Or you can come through Common Ground and come in that way. But we are located on the ground floor. It's very common for people not to be able to find us. So I always encourage people to call our hotline or call our office number if they're having trouble finding where we are. But I do want to say that we are on a couple of MTD lines as well. So if people don't have their own transportation, please do use that public transport to get where you need to go. And the other side of that is, because we realize that there are so many rural communities, we also offer telehealth services. So we are actually driving out, and if they need court advocacy, we're coming to the county you're in. If you need therapy, let's get that set up on telehealth so you're not driving down to Chambana. So we're really trying to meet people just whatever they need, and if it's too much to come to our office, okay, we can work around that.
You're an old soul. You are just wise beyond your years.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, we're going to take our third break, and when we come back, I want to touch on if people could just walk in to the storefront if they need help and the hotline services.
Awesome. Great next subject.
Okay, great. Okay, and we are back. Okay, we just can't stop talking. I mean, there's just so much to cover. Okay, but before we move on to the hotline, the 1974 Races opened in Champaign-Urbana.
Yes.
And the acronym is WAR.
Yeah.
WAR, so Women Against Rape.
Yes, the acronym is WAR. We actually still have the tapestry from when they first opened. We have it hanging in our office. So if you come to our office for any of our events, you're going to see that hanging up. And I think that's really important that we're not forgetting our history, that we've been around for so long. So yes, they opened in 1974. They didn't become Races until 2009. But if we're going back to 1974, February after the year that WAR opened, they started their 24/7 crisis hotline for anyone affected by sexual violence. So not just survivors, but support people for survivors too. So our hotline is over 50 years old. We've been in the community for so long, and I think at this point, we're just okay, let's get back to our roots and figure out how can we be a connecting point in the community and help build up people who need help within the community.
Pretty progressive for the 70s.
Yes, but So often within the sexual violence movement, that's what you're seeing. You're seeing a movement that was originally built by Black and brown women and who worked really hard to create these support systems for their communities. And then it was like other people realized, oh yeah, we can do this too. We having that empowerment there of we don't just have to hope it will change.
Sure.
We can work towards that change ourselves has always been really the heart of us. So when we're thinking about, how do we keep our staff, not burn out? How do we build our services out further to better support our community? So for example, we've been really building our language access services. So we currently have both of our legal advocates are bilingual, and we have a bilingual therapist as well. And we're continuing to build that language access. So we've always been looking for what else can we do to support people? How else can we be here with our community? Yeah.
Tell me about the hotline, the over 50-year hotline.
Yes.
And then can people, if they need help, can they simply walk in your doors at Lincoln Square?
Great question. Let me cover the hotline first, because I think that'll be a great point for people to latch onto. So our 24/7 hotline is operated 365 days a year, including holidays. The number is 217-384-4444.
It's even got our area code.
Right?
Wow.
Exactly.
Okay.
So 217-384-4444. That's a 24/7 hotline. And when people call into that hotline, what's going to happen is they're going to get our answering service. Now, they have two options. They can either leave a number and get called back. They don't have to leave a name. They can just be anonymous if they want to. Or they can get connected directly to an advocate. They don't have to leave a number. We'll just patch them through. And our advocates go through a 40-hour sexual assault intervention, crisis intervention training before they're even allowed to come in and start working.
Is that a volunteer position?
Oh, well, it's both. So
Okay.
all of our employees are trained
Okay.
in 40-hour crisis intervention, but also we train all of our volunteers too as well.
Okay.
So anybody who's thinking about volunteering with us, we're going to build out those protective factors for them as well to make sure they don't feel like we're just throwing them in.
Sure.
So that hotline, if they call, they can get patched through, they can leave that number, but it's really the front door for our organization. So you can find out more about our services, that advocacy, that counseling, that prevention education. We've had people call and ask about internships before. That's totally okay. We call it a hotline. I like to refer to it as a warm line. It's okay if you're just curious. Like, you don't have to be in active crisis. It's okay if you are. We're here to support you if you are. But it's also okay if you're just curious. So we've had support people call in and say, hey, I just received this disclosure and I don't know what I'm going to tell my friend. We can walk you through that. Or we have survivors who call in and maybe they just need to process something, or they're having a panic attack and they need some help grounding themselves. We're also trained to provide those grounding techniques and those breathing techniques as well.
You described your staff as servant leaders and that mentality. What is that?
So races, we love to say that we build off of that servant leadership model. We don't love the term servant leadership, but our whole ideal there is that those people in power, management, administration, we are there to be pillars for our staff. So what that means is we are making sure that we're sitting down and listening. We are making sure we are being transparent and having conversations when things might change, or if, something comes up in the organization everybody needs to know about, we make sure we have that transparency and really make sure that they feel heard. So, for example, if somebody's coming up and they're like, hey, I really think we need a policy for how we're answering the door. Maybe it starts to feel a little bit unsafe. And so let's build out that policy. We're not saying like, oh, no, we don't need that. Or why are you bringing this up? We're saying, okay, what's that going to look like? How can we include everybody in this conversation? Just because you're bringing it forward doesn't mean that other people haven't recognized that we have a need for that as well.
What's interesting about the organization and the changing of the name, it was specific to women at one point.
Yes.
And now I imagine the spectrum of who you serve is quite large.
Yes. So We are there for anyone who needs our services. And I think that's really important in sexual violence work because so often certain groups are excluded. So I think about male survivors there. So it's not uncommon, especially as you're looking through the history of sexual violence work, to see names that are focused around women specifically. However, as the movement has changed and we've recognized just kind of what the epidemic actually is, that's when we've been able to go back and look at those biases and say, okay, yes, maybe this is not a group that we've been built out to serve properly. We need to fix that.
Okay. And that includes children and men.
Absolutely.
Rape Advocacy, Counseling, and Education Services is the acronym. Can you define the rape and the sexual assault? Who can get help from you guys? Like what does that define?
Yes, so we are survivor-centered. So what that means is we understand that the person who decides if they experience sexual violence is that survivor.
Okay.
So if somebody is calling in and they're saying, this is what I experienced, can you tell me if this is sexual assault? We're going to turn it back over to them and say, well, how do you feel about it? If you feel like you were affected by this, you still deserve support. You can still receive our services. So we have those survivors. We also have those support people. So quite often my brain goes to parents who are supporting children who have experienced sexual abuse. So we're also supporting those parents, even if it's just they're kind of on the periphery. They didn't experience themselves, but we know that they still deserve that support.
One of the points that you made in an email to me that 1 in 10 children before their 18th birthday will experience sexual abuse.
Yes, that is
1 in 10.
1 in 10. 1 in 10. And just as a thought process, I encourage listeners to think about that. When you walk into a classroom, that's about 30 kids.
Yeah.
And so 3 of them have likely experienced sexual abuse, which is why our prevention education services are so important, because we're there to receive those disclosures. But we also have other programs that can build out more protective factors that adults can actually take responsibility to help keep kids safe.
Okay, and when we're going to take our last break of the episode, but when we come back, I want to touch on the award that Races got and the 100 people you are interested in educating further.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Okay, and we are back. Okay. Races. I want to talk about the award you recently received, which is why you even came into my orbit. So let's talk about that and the 100 people that this award allows you to train.
Yes. So we are so proud not just to offer, I know I've talked a lot about K through 12, we also offer education for adults. So adults can assume that responsibility in creating healthier communities for our children. So Stewards of Children is a training created by Darkness to Light, which is a nonprofit based out of South Carolina. It is one of the few evidence-informed and award-winning trainings for adults to take about preventing child sexual abuse. And its goal is to equip adults with 3 distinct skills.
Okay.
Making choices that help protect children, taking risk to help minimize abuse against children. And let me expand on that a little bit.
Okay.
So when I say taking risk, I mean that these are hard conversations to have. It's hard to, it's hard to call your school and say, what are you doing about this? If they're not doing, it to the level that you're satisfied with, that can continue to be a hard conversation. It can be a hard conversation just to loop in other adults about the issue, right? So it's one of those things that you have to do scared. So taking those risks to minimize child sexual abuse, they talk about how to have those conversations with other adults. They also give really great insight onto how even architecture can increase a risk of abuse if there are hidden places where kids can sneak off to, or it's not as easy to watch them. But that also means we can advocate for change, whether that's more adults, more assistants to watch if they're like playing on a playground, whatever, or if it is so bad that there maybe needs to be construction done. So they equip people to recognize that and have those conversations. But finally, it is teaching us, how do we hold other adults to the same standard? How do we become unified as this adult safety web to protect our children in our community from abuse?
And that's the third point of the model?
That's the third point. So it's telling you, it's saying, hey, I know these conversations are hard. It's even harder to hold your peers to that, other adults to that. Let's find out how we can bring them in and work with them to create a safer community in general.
I asked you a very general question. I said, what are some things that you can look for in a child to recognize if they are under abuse? And you said there's so much overlap that it's hard to define it, or you don't want to even define it in those like depression, anxiety. I mean, that can be so many things.
It's so hard. And this is part of the reason why we need to have these conversations and why we need to build in those more protective factors, because child sexual abuse can show up in the same way as anxiety, as depression. However, any of those symptoms, like if your child is wetting the bed, if they're having trouble sleeping, if they're just unusually nervous, we all know that those are signs that we need to check in. So I won't name exact symptoms that come up with child sexual abuse, but I will point out that they overlap with a lot of things that we know, okay, I need to have a conversation with them.
100%. Yeah. One of the things you mentioned when you gave those 3 points to the model, you're going to be scared.
Yeah, you're going to be scared.
If you have to incriminate a family member or a loved one, I mean, what an impossible task.
90% of child survivors experience abuse by somebody they knew, whether it was in the family or family friend, et cetera. So that's the thing, is this is something where you have to learn to do it scared. This is something where you have to, I say a lot, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. But that has been a huge barrier in reporting, because so often that abuse is coming in from the family. We see less reports because they still care about those family members. It goes back to that complicated, have to hold 2 things at the same time. So that's really the hardest part, is letting that sink in and recognizing just how deep of an issue this is.
I asked you also off camera, off mic, the prevalence in our community, if that's increased or decreased in this arena.
I would say that it has, I think violence prevention and addressing the violence in our community has always been one of, if not the top concern in Champaign. I will say sexual violence specifically has always been within the top 3, as we're seeing those surveys come in, like from our wonderful public health department.
Okay. April 1st. We happen to be recording on it. This is April 1st, right? Okay. And so this is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, SAAM.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to tell me about the importance of this month for the organization?
Oh, I could tell you so many things. So I will say that Sexual Assault Awareness Month is kind of our big month where we're like, okay, let's get out in the community and remind everybody that we're here. So we actually have 2 priorities that we're bringing to our community for SAM this year. And our first priority is building that parent and caregiver capacity to create those safer communities. So that Stewards of Children Award, where we can now train 100 people, that's where we're looking for. We're looking for those people to increase that capacity. And then we're also just deepening our partnerships with other organizations to continue to end that sexual violence. So the way we're doing that is not just a social media campaign, though we are doing a social media campaign to increase awareness, increase education around sexual violence. We also have a variety of events going on in April, including one that's actually happening tonight.
Okay, what are some of the events upcoming?
Yes.
You want to tell me about them?
So tonight we're hosting UCRJ, so Urbana-Champaign Reproductive Justice.
Okay.
And they are doing a Know Your Reproductive Rights workshop at the RACE's office. This is completely open to the public. It's free. It is from, let me check the time. It is from 7 to 8:30 p.m. So that would be a great time if people wanted to walk by and come in our office. Totally. On April 7th, we're having a day of action. It's Teal Tuesday. So teal is the awareness color for sexual violence.
Okay.
So we're encouraging everybody to wear teal and tag us on social media. April 18th, we're doing I believe this is the second or third year we've done this event. It's called Take Back the Narrative. And it's really giving survivors spaces to show, look, my trauma doesn't define me. This is how I'm healing, even though the world is hard, even though this is hard sometimes. So Take Back the Narrative is going to be on April 18th from 6 to 9:30 p.m. From 6 to 7, it will be a family-friendly event. I believe there's going to be food. There's going to be an art exhibit, just a lot of wonderful things. And then
where is that?
So that will be at the IMC. So the Independent Media Center is on South Broadway.
Okay, Ariana, okay.
Yes, it's very close to Lincoln Square Mall.
Okay.
And that would be something we'd be happy to give people addresses. Like if you call the office, if you call the hotline, that wouldn't be the end of the world. We could give you that address.
Okay.
So from 7 on, that's when it's going to become more of letting people share and not really policing like what they are sharing. So it might get more into things that parents might not be comfortable with their children hearing.
Okay. So maybe not family friendly at that hour.
Yeah. So that first hour from 6 to 7, we have carved that out because we want families to come. We love our community. But after that, we're really giving the floor to survivors.
I want you to take this last few minutes and tell me how people can reach you. You're a nonprofit, correct?
Yes.
Donate, all of the things that pertain to races.
Awesome. A great stepping stone for that is our website. So cu-races.org. I know it has also popped up on the screen. There it is. Beautiful. So I would recommend people go there. We have all of our events for SAM listed out. We have all of our social media listed out and all of the numbers that you could possibly want to call. So I would recommend calling our office number if you just want to know more about events. But it's also totally okay if you call that hotline number. You're going to see both when you go to our website.
Okay, and you can donate online.
Yes. Sorry, I totally forgot about that. Yes, we do have a tab where you can donate through our website as well.
Abbi, what a pleasure it has been.
I feel like I've been, thank you for listening to me yap.
But yapping about something so important, and it touches everyone in our community.
Yes.
So I just really valued this conversation. It was just really, really, really great.
Okay. I really appreciate you having me on.
It was great. Is there anything else that we missed that you want to share?
I don't believe so. Let me drop that hotline number one more time. 217-384-4444.
And I want to just I'm going to end with some stats. 45.1% of women experience contact sexual violence in their lifetime. That's nearly half of all women. 16% of men, that's 1 in 6 men. And we already said about the children.
Yeah.
That's probably higher than 3 in 10.
Yes, so 1 in 10, and it is probably higher than that because we can only see the statistics from people who choose to report.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Abbi.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this week's HyperLocal show. If you like what you hear or you need anything from me, let me know at hyperlocalscu.com. Also, search and follow HyperLocalsCU on all social media. Like me, follow me. Bye.